Picks you up off the ground, try it, you will see.
Very much. Thank you. I appreciate your patience with, especially if you look in that direction, you might be blinded by the lights, but what they tell me that my good looks are so stunning that they have to light them. No. We are going to move fast today. I'm going to be passing out a little mini handout that is merely sort of an outline to help you follow along. I will tell you that if you enjoyed the keynote today, I'm glad. I need you to know I'm putting on a different hat this afternoon. My job as a keynote speaker is to lift you up, to give you some things to think about, to help you feel better about your tired, difficult, challenging life. Well, listen here. In here, I'm here to help you be more effective in your work. And my job is to give you a bunch of stuff in a short amount of time. Keynote mode is like, you hang in there. You can do it. Workshop mode is... So we are going to move fast through some content that is, again, was originally, when I was working at UW-Madison several years ago, 2 decades ago, fine, and a colleague of mine who supervised the front desk staff there, the staff who used to be just the mail ladies, putting mail in, and their positions had gradually grown to do supervision, but had never been given any training in supervision. And they were having some problem with conflict resolution, and so they asked me to come up with something, and I developed this weird little, I guess it would be called a model, but it was really just an image to try to display what I was going to talk about with conflict resolution. So what I said, in any interpersonal relationship, there are two people. And I think I left on your little handout your circles blank so that you can color them in as you'd like. And there are two things that connect two people in an interpersonal relationship. A relationship or lack thereof, and communication or lack thereof. And then conflict is an inevitable product of any interpersonal relationship. It's not, oh my gosh, if you do everything right, there won't be any conflict. Absolutely not. So the presentation originally was about these three things, and then over the years it grew, and now when I do staff development, staff training for organizations, and also leadership development, I think I mentioned this in the keynote, I tend to break things down into reaching out skills, deepening your effectiveness at connecting with others, and reaching in skills, your ability to improve yourself with skills and bringing your best self to work, to school, to life. So this is obviously going to be about reaching out. I will tell you right now, the slide deck that I borrowed these slides from comes from a 3-hour presentation. And rather than rush through it, I can't stand going to conference breakouts where they're like, and it's like, what? So I have selected a 75-minute highlight reel, but I want to give you the whole thing. And for $9.95, no. If you look at the bottom of your little mini handout, and they might still be going around, but if you look at the little strip, there's an email address that says out@theripplesguy.com. Do you see that? I have about 15 of these dummy emails set up that are basically forwarded emails that are set up with auto replies. So if you send a blank email to out@theripplesguy.com, in about 30 to 50 seconds is just going to come back with the summary of the 3-hour version of the presentation. So it'll include some content that we don't explore here, but it'll include all the points I make. And mostly what I want you to be doing right now is to be thinking about people that you are stuck interacting with at work or in life that drive you crazy. Again, resist the temptation to look around the room if they're here at this conference. Because I will tell you that, how many of you, besides my keynote, how many of you have gone to a session here that has definitely provided information or ideas that you feel like you can take back and use? Okay, awesome. The problem is, if you're like me, when you come to conferences like this, you go home with handouts and notes and ideas, and then the conference stuff often goes on the conference notebook shelf. And there's all this good stuff there, right? And so what I'm trying to do, the reason my handout is so puny, is because I know there's a good chance this is going to go in that file and it'll never get looked at again. The way this sticks is if I can have you thinking of the 1, 2, or 3 people that really drive you crazy, that you're stuck working with, that you're stuck living with, that you're stuck living down the street from, or in organizations with, there is hope. And of course, what you hope, the answer is that you can fix them. Right? Because they're broken. It's not you, it's them, right? Oh, yes, it is. Now, normally in the 3-hour version of this presentation, I actually spend some time on people and I look a little bit at Myers-Briggs stuff. How many of you know Myers-Briggs? That means something to you. For those of you not familiar, the short version is Isabel Myers-Briggs, a woman, was hired after World War II with her team of researchers to develop an instrument to help all these GIs coming back from the war match them up with careers and jobs. And so they looked at the personality writing and research of Carl Jung, who is a psychologist who said that our personalities were largely formed by age 3. We've since rethought some of that, but we still know that a lot of times the kid that at 3-year-old is blah, 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 grows up to be the staff member in the meeting going blah, 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 blah. And I look a little bit at the light version of that, and we're going to dive into that. How many of you, raise your hand if you're an external processor? You know that you process things externally. Raise your hand. An extrovert if you know your Myers-Briggs. Okay, some of you. Raise your hand if you know you're an introvert. Okay. So extroverts, you know you're an extrovert if somebody asks your opinion about something and you don't know what it is until you talk for 5 minutes. Like if you ask me, hey Paul, what are you going to have for dinner? I can't just like, bleh. I have to be like, well, let's see. Last night I went across the river to I think it was Titletown Brewery over there. So good. It was really nice. I had a little salad to be healthy, and then I had this, it was so good. Oh my gosh, and I have half of it in my refrigerator. I could have had that for lunch. I did not think of it. Do you see how far away I am from the topic? Welcome to my world. Introverts do like this. They're like this. The banquet. And I'm like, because we extroverts, we think you're slower than us. We're like, hello! What are you thinking? What's your idea? And of course you're thinking, if you'd shut up for a second. Right? And in the staff meetings, we drive you crazy. You know, you're like, blah, 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 shut up. But you drive us crazy too. Because extroverts speak in essay format. Blah, 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 blah. Somewhere in our essay is a brilliant thesis statement. But you have to dig, right? Internal processors, introverts, they tend to speak in bullet format. So they've thought through what they want to say, and then they do this. They're like, So when you say, hey, staff, we've got to decide what color t-shirts we're going to make this year, I'd be like, oh, I think they should be blue because I saw this really new cool blue and it's really awesome and it's really bright, blah, 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 blah. And then an introvert goes, red. And here's me. I don't understand. I need a sentence. I need a paragraph. Tell me about red. But when it comes to relationships, there's another corner of the Myers-Briggs stuff we're going to look at. But let me ask you first, if we were going to brainstorm a list of qualities that we would say are essential to having a good working relationship between two people, what would you say are critical ingredients to a healthy work relationship between two people? Trust. Communication, we're going to keep separate because that is a separate area. But yes, trust, I heard. What else? Respect. Excellent. Those are the three that I usually say are trust, respect, and the third one I say is positive regard. Okay? Liking someone is one form of positive regard. Loving someone is a very advanced form of positive regard. But let me ask you a critical question right now. In order to have a good working relationship with somebody else, do you have to like them? Okay. Do you have to love them? Okay. So Another one of the quadrants, or one of the other personality traits that Carl Jung looked at, that Myers-Briggs looks at, is how we make decisions. Head people and heart people, or thinkers and feelers. Everyone in this room thinks. Everyone in this room feels. But when it comes to making decisions, most of us do one and then the other. Some of us use one a lot more than the other. Some of us lean a little bit. Head people, they focus on the tasks at hand. And heart people focus more on relationships and emotions. If I were to say which is the most important piece of the success of your organization, your team, your department, either the whole thing or the little group that you're in charge of or that you work with, is it the tasks that you are responsible for getting done, that you're mandated to get done, that you've agreed to do, or is it the relationships that you build with each other, with community, with other departments? Ultimately, the answer is both, right? You need to get stuff done, and you need to get along. But how head people approach their job is like this. They say this: if we do our jobs right, if we do what we say what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, the relationships will come naturally. I see some head nods. And the heart people say, no, 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 no. You can't get anything done without a relationship. So when the head people say, okay, let's start the meeting, first item on the agenda, the heart people say, no, 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 can we do an icebreaker? And I just successfully identified the head people in the room because you rolled your eyes. When I said icebreaker, you're like, oh, the icebreaker. Or the check-in, right? You're like trying to get started. And the heart person's like, let's just go around. How are you? How are you? And if you think, I don't give a crap how you are, I want to know what's going on. How do we get stuff done? Raise your hand if you lean more on the head side. Okay. Raise your hand if you're more on the heart side. Okay. When it comes to dealing with people that drive us crazy, it is helpful to know that head people want to be respected. So much so that they sometimes make decisions at work that get them respected, but not liked. Heart people, we want to be liked. And we want to like people that we work with. So we will sometimes make decisions that get us liked, but not respected. So I have a couple pieces of advice that I want to share with you. The first one is for heart people. And this is a controversial piece of advice. Vegetables are gross. How many people would dare to agree with me that this statement is true? I know the rest of you are so wrong. You're like, shut up. When I was growing up, I was never allowed to leave the table until And the only thing worse than a big bowl of steamed peas and carrots is when they've gotten cold. And every night at the table, I'm sitting there and it's like, oh, I hate this, it's disgusting. When I went to college, my big acting out behavior, I did not eat a single vegetable for 4 years. Freedom! And then, after grad school, I got my first grown-up after-school job working at Beloit College. So I moved into the residence halls. I was still going to be living eating in the residence halls, but suddenly I felt pressure to be a role model. So I thought I better eat my vegetables. So I knew there was a way to love the vegetables. So some people are like, oh, you just haven't tried the right vegetables. So they're like, okra, you should try okra. Okra is disgusting. And then they were like, oh, roasted asparagus is so delicious. No, it's not. And it kind of affects your body. Like I needed another reason to hate vegetables. Whatever. And then, one day, I had my breakthrough. Sitting at Beloit College, hating a salad, and it was, get this, it was Nutrition Week on our campus. So on each of the little tables was this little food pyramid. And it had, you're supposed to eat this, this, and this. And I'm staring at this while and I realized Nowhere on that food pyramid did it say, like vegetables. What did it say? Eat them! And in this moment, this insight, I realized I'd spent my whole life trying to have a love affair with peas and carrots the way I have a love affair with Oreo cookies. Me loves the Oreos. And the next bite of salad was different, because instead of trying to like it, I was just eating. And I chewed and I swallowed and I had another bite. And from that point on, vegetables did not become something I liked. It was just something I got done. And it was easier to eat them. Now, lest you forget, this is about people. And if I ask you, heart people, listen up, especially people that drive you crazy. If I can remind you that you don't need to like everyone that you work with. You don't have to love everyone you work with. You just have to eat everyone you work. No, that is not. No, you got to work with them. And heart people, we are often guilty of needing to like and be liked to the point that it sometimes gets in the way. So it is possible that your homework assignment is going to be to leave here thinking about, can I stop trying to like some people that I work with and just work with them? And here's the bonus. Because when I did this with vegetables, I found out, you guys, true story, some vegetables are not as disgusting and horrible as others. And I lived here a few more months and I discovered the Wisconsin magic. You pulled up cheese on that broccoli! And that's some good stuff. Broccoli's good. With cheese on it. Head people, you don't have a problem with that. You're not at home going, I wish it liked me. You're like, ugh. But let me ask you a question, head people. How many of you would agree that if you are in a work relationship and there are open, positive lines of communication, and you know the person well enough to know when to communicate with them, how to communicate with them, that your job and their job can be done more efficiently? Raise your hand if you would agree with that. Okay. When I try to teach head people the importance of building relationships, you start seeing their eyes roll. But when I say, how would you like some tips to be thinking about how things can run more efficiently? Oh, they get all excited. Efficiency. I'm in. So let me tell you that the advice I share with you is about creating deposits. Stephen Covey, in his book, Seven Steps of Highly Effective People, he talks about this. Actually, other leadership trainers often talk about relationships as emotional bank accounts. And when you're building a relationship with somebody, every time you get to know the person a little bit, every time you make a commitment to do something and you follow up and actually do it, that's deposit. And when you let someone down, it's a withdrawal. And here's what I like about this metaphor. Withdrawals are inevitable in any relationship. It's not a question of you don't eventually screw up. Things happen, conflict comes up, yucky stuff happens. The reason most work relationships that are strained are in the condition they're in is not because of withdrawals. My personal experience and in talking to people, most relationships that are strained are strained because there haven't been any deposits. Because this is what happens. If we are on a team and we work together, it is inevitable that 3, 6, 7, with the 9 of us on a team, inevitably I'm going to connect with a couple of them more, right? We're going to have more in common. We maybe got kids doing the same school, or we'll have interests that we've got. So I talk a little bit more to them. And I get to know a little bit more. This happened to me with students all the time. Beginning of semester, everyone was the same. Go through a couple weeks of training, go through the year, you spend a little more time talking to a couple people, well then you know she's got a test. So she comes in, I said, how was that bio test? Well, he walks in right behind her, he just took the same test, but I don't know that. And I didn't ask him. And then that can either be a withdrawal or at least not a deposit. And I was getting this feedback from my staff at the end of this first semester. You're a really good hall director, you do a lot of things right, but you play favorites. And the second, third time I heard that, I'm like, this is a problem, because I don't think I'm playing favorites. But they do, so I need to do something. And it slowly occurred to me that what was happening was these people I naturally connected with more, it actually wasn't that I was playing favorites as I was making more deposits because I was more interested in their life, because we had had longer conversations, so I knew what to ask them about. So the question for you is, are there some relationships that you have that if they were more efficiently oiled would help you be more effective in your work, would help them be more effective? Could you make some deposits, have some conversations where you get to know them just a little bit better and maybe get to understand them a little bit better? And the third point that I often make in this area that we're going to skip over is this getting out of your chair, and this idea that how we look at the world is how we look at the world. And one of the things we are really bad about is figuring out how to look at the world a little bit differently. And in a longer version of this presentation, I give them some time. Think of a relationship that's currently bankrupt and share which strategy that you might use to help more effective. We're going to come back to that question, but we're going to do it for the next part as well. And we're going to talk about the bottom piece right here, which is communication. So as we switch over, there's a couple really quick things. This piece of advice has to do with extroverts and introverts. So if you are an external processor, and we think of interpersonal dialogue, having a conversation with someone as a game of catch, whoever's holding the ball is doing the talking. We extroverts are ball hogs, right? We grab onto that ball and we're like, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes we don't know how to stop talking. Introverts, by the way, hate to be interrupted, and it's one of the big flaws that we extroverts sometimes do. Somebody who has been quiet through most of the team meeting will finally say something, and then it sounds like we're stealing your idea. We're like, oh, that is such a good idea. I would love to do that, blah, blah, blah. And it's not that we're stealing it. It's that that's how we approve it. We have to say it out of our mouth. And one great way to silence an introvert is to interrupt them. An extrovert, on the other hand, sometimes we need it. How many extroverts will admit they've been in a situation where they're done making a point and they don't quite know how to wrap it up, so they just keep rambling? How many of you will admit to that? Look! Introverts are like, how is that even possible? It's because our essays go on and on and on. Internal processors, you all play catch as if the ball is a hot potato. And sometimes, especially in the get to know you, the chit-chat stuff that you sometimes, sometimes those little short conversations are where you can make deposits, where you can get to know people a little bit. And sometimes you're so busy giving us the bullet answers that you prefer to speak in that we miss out on opportunities to understand your point, to get to know you. And so one of the pieces of advice I would throw out to you, especially if you're an internal processor, and when it comes to playing catch, is how can you practice giving us some paragraphs, some essays, some sentences instead of bullets? And then if you're an external processor, to wonder, am I a ball hog? Can I take a second when somebody asks me a question to find the bullet point first? If somebody asks me a question during Q&A periods and workshops, I can start talking immediately. As soon as I hear the question, I can start talking. It often takes me a few seconds to know how I'm going to answer, but I can start right away. I find if I just take one of those breaths that I was talking about in the keynote, I can find a bullet point that is going to save us all a little bit of time and energy. Let me jump over to the second piece of advice, and that is choosing the channel carefully. There are a ton of methods we have for communicating these days. I love this picture. I found this where, theoretically, the teacher or school administrator is using a bullhorn to communicate to this girl who perhaps could be reached more efficiently by sending her a text or a Facebook message. There are all these ways in which we communicate now. I can tell you that in my daily interactions with setting up and managing the speaking engagements I have coming up, email is used a lot. Phone, both voicemail and live, is used a lot. And I will tell you that Facebook is increasingly used for me. If I'm working with a college student organization and the student is the contact and not the advisor, if I want a response in a day, if I Facebook or text them, I get it within an hour. If I send them an email, you need to hear this if you are my age or older. Email to college students is what faxing is to us, okay? It is not their preferred method of communication. We love email. Around my age, I remember my very first email address was at Beloit College, paul.t.wesselman@backstaff.beloit.edu. Like 6-point font at the bottom of my little thing. And this idea, there's so many great advantages to email. And I love email. I can't stand Facebook messaging because I can't archive it, I can't prioritize it, I can't track it. The golden rule says treat people like you want to be treated. The platinum rule says treat people like they want to be treated. And if I want to use my preferred channel of communication, it's going to be email or it's going to be leaving you a voicemail. I have 3 friends that are 20-something. They do not listen to voicemail. They just won't. They'll see you call. Hello, I'll just call you back. What did you want? Why don't you hang up and listen to the 2.5-minute voicemail that articulated exactly what I need? And they're like, or you could just tell me. From those claps, I hear I'm not alone. Josh Myers, I love you, but you never listen to my voicemails. And the golden rule says, do what I prefer. But if I'm trying to get them to bring their best self, if I'm trying to get the response, and I think, what's their preferred method? That often changes. I'll put up with Facebooking. I'm managing some social engagements to try to get people together this weekend in Madison, a chance to see a bunch of people in a short amount of time. So I'm coordinating schedules. I sent 2 emails. I did not hear back. This morning I'm like, I'll deal with it. I'll do a Facebook. 4 exchanges in the first hour I was awake this morning. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, all right, fine. But I have to remember then, I got a little extra work to do. But in terms of what works, sometimes the channel needs to be thought about. Email is fantastic for information that you want to try to archive and that there loves to be a trace. It's awful for emotional information. Because I need this now can be interpreted as, I need this now, or I need this now. And very often when we put a terse, short email together, it often ends up sounding angrier than maybe we wanted. Sometimes we want it. And very often we will use a passive form of communication, one that we're not interacting with live, either on the phone or in person, when it's difficult news, or if that we're worried about conflict, when that is exactly the information that should be done to minimize miscommunication. We should avoid using passive communication that can sit on one end and be misinterpreted. And so we need to think more consciously about the channel. Now, given those 4 pieces of advice we just raced through under relationships and communication, if your homework assignment was to take one of those and go be more effective at it, creating deposits, what were the 4 things? Creating deposits, somebody, playing catch, channel, what's the other one? What one? Oh yeah, eat your veggies are gross. Which one of those 4, if you went back and worked on it, could theoretically help you be more effective at managing relationships, working with specific people or people in general? Can you get a pair of you together, 3, maybe 4 of you, but not more because time is of the essence. Introduce yourself if you don't know them, otherwise share with them. Which one of these would help you be more effective? Go. I want you to, we're going to watch a little YouTubians. And there is a television show called The Office. And if you're older than me or my age, you're like me and you're like, that's not really that funny. It's awkward. And if you're younger than me, you're like, it is so awesome. No, it's not. It's awkward. But there was an actor who played the role of Dwayne, whose name is Rainn Wilson. As Rainn started having success as an actor, he decided to take some of his money and he wanted to do something that was a really important part of his faith growing up. The Baha'i faith was about kindness and helping others. So he took some money and he gathered a bunch of his friends that were in the business, as they call it, and started making some really cool videos. And they put them online and like they were awesome. The high production value was really high, as you're going to see in one we're going to watch. And like 20,000, 30,000 people would see these videos, and he was really happy. And then one of the people who saw it told her friend, and her name was Gail, and her friend's name was Oprah. And when Oprah says, oh my gosh, everyone's got to know about this, then everyone does. So Soul Pancake is the name of the company, organization, and Oprah started putting some of these on her television station, and some of them are just phenomenal. So there is a lot of professionals involved with the filming of these. The people that you're going to hear that are going to step into this booth and stand in front of those are just everyday people. Those are not actors.
Oh, this is high.
Can you hear me? Loud and clear?
Hello, Annie. So, Wes, I know you've been my boss for a couple of years now. You have been a really great mentor to me, and I really appreciate that.
So I just want to thank you for being a great dad. You're always there to support me, even when I say, no, I don't really need this talk right now, but you're there nevertheless, and it's always just great to have someone to rely on.
For the past 12 years, you've been my best friend, and I want to thank you for everything you've done for me.
You've always been there for me, my number one friend. I think we both know that this is going to go a lot farther than school.
Although I know we've only been married for a year and a half, I know I don't always acknowledge how awesome you are.
You have a great sense of humor. You're witty and sharp.
You're a kind person and always thoughtful of others.
You are one of the sweetest, kindest, most thoughtful men and people in my life, and I really appreciate that.
And the whole time you were growing up, you made it so easy to be a mom. And I don't know if I've ever told you that.
You are absolutely beautiful, absolutely, and you are so, so talented. Keep doing what you're doing, because it is going to take you places.
Do we switch spots? Is that what we do?
Jackson.
Yes. I'm so lucky that you're in my life today as not only a coworker, but as a friend. You're someone that inspires me every day just to keep a positive attitude and to laugh and smile and stay lighthearted.
I always really appreciate how you start singing at the drop of a hat, because you have such a beautiful voice, and I love the way that you filled my whole childhood with song.
First met you 12 years ago in kindergarten, and I'm so glad I did, because you've been my best friend ever since. That's the best, so thanks.
The compliment I want to give you today that I've never said to you before is your awareness of other people and how nice you are to everyone in the room.
You're very good at making everyone in a room smile, putting everyone at ease. I admire that so much in you.
You're honestly such an amazing person. You are my best friend in the world, and you always will be. All I can say is that I really love you, and I don't know, it might be hard for you to believe because I don't act like it sometimes, but I do.
I like to say that I take after you because I think that you're just such a great person, and I aspire to be more like you as an adult. And I think that if I could be just like my mom, that would be the greatest gift I could have.
You're the most beautiful woman I know. I'm so blessed to have you in my life. I probably don't tell you that enough. Yeah.
Soul Pancake, subscribe.
My favorite part of that video is the moment towards the end when the newlywed husband, the guy with the beard, says, "You're the most beautiful person I know, and I don't tell you that enough." And then they cut to her, and then they cut back to him, and you see him kind of looking off, and he's like, "Yeah." My take on what he's doing in his head is he's like, number one, wow, yes. And number two, I really don't tell you this enough. Why don't I? Like, he's got this look on his face like, yeah. And he captures in that moment, because it seems to be an aha moment for him and a moment of joy for him to communicate to somebody he cares about that he cares about her. Some interesting research that's coming out of this relatively new field called positive psychology is that when you pay a genuine compliment to somebody, when you do a kindness to somebody, it helps, it makes them feel good. The person who receives the kindness or the compliment feels better. The person who feels even more better is the person who did the giving. And when you look at a day later, 2 days later, the kindness, the happiness has started to fade from this person. But 3 or 4 days later, this person still has an elevated sense of contentment and of happiness because of doing something nice for someone else. And they believe that that is hardwired into our genetics, that rose up so that our society would keep on going. This idea that you get a sustained benefit from doing something nice for somebody you know, or for somebody you don't. For in a situation where you think there is some payback, and for a situation where you think there is no way this ever comes back to me other than karmically. So then that goes back to what deposits might you find it useful to be making? Very quickly, this last piece here, actually not very quickly, we're doing pretty well on time, actually. I want to give us a chance to do one more chit-chat, and then we got kind of a cool activity. Oh, let me start the process. So I gave both the gals here at the front a stack of little papers. On the back are this deck of cards is actually just printed off on PDF and has 100 different quotes on it. I'm going to ask when you get this stack to just grab 2 for yourself and pass it around until everyone gets one. You don't have to not look, but it's a little bit better if you don't look until I give you the instructions, okay? So take 2 of these and then pass it on and let these snake around a little bit. And I think, did I give you guys some as well? I might not have. Here. I think I had a little reserve stack for you guys, so we'll start some here too. So let's talk about conflict. When you hear the word conflict, let's free associate a little bit. What words or images or ideas come to mind when you hear conflict? Anger? Discomfort? Good. I mean, not good that you're discomfort, but trouble? Whenever I hear the word trouble, I think trouble. There's trouble in River City, and it rhymes with T, and that stands for P, and that rhymes with pool. Because my people love the musicals, but that's another story altogether. Stop reinforcing stereotypes! God! It's so in my head. A lot of people will say war, winning and losing. And I don't want to tell you what you should think of or that those are wrong, because they're not. I want to add some words. I want you, when you hear conflict, to at least be open to hearing words like healthy, inevitable, opportunity. If I asked you to think about a close relationship, work, personal, neighborly, whatever, that went through a conflict, big or small, that on the other side you were closer to the person or that there was more respect or positive regard. How many of you can think of an example? We're not going to go around and talk about what they are. Okay. Most of us can think of that. And you need to know that conflict is not good or bad. Conflict is. It is an inevitable part of any interpersonal relationship. I'm sure most people in this room have heard when you're talking about group dynamics and developing a team, that there's those stages. form, norm, storm, perform, where you bring people together, you end up fighting, you hopefully set some guidelines and rules, and then you go do your work. And storm stage is inevitable. Heart people, listen up. Because when you're in a group and that team inevitably starts disagreeing, a lot of times we go, no fighting, don't fight, no! Group hug, group hug! And we are robbing the group of an opportunity to develop as a healthy team by letting that conflict happen. Now, we want the conflict to happen in a healthy way, and there are definitely healthy ways to respond to conflict and unhealthy. Some people really avoid conflict. Some people are a little bit too happy to jump into conflict. Like if there's not enough around, they might just stir the pot a little bit. Some people grew up in environments where how you expressed anger or frustration is you just got it out and you had these awful... And then you got it out and you were fine. And other families, and I'm learning that when I moved to Wisconsin with all this Scandinavian, we are not going to have feelings, nor are we going to express them. When my best friend's family, they live in Oshkosh. So Cleaners, if you know it. They ran So Cleaners for years. Now they live out in Winneconne. And when I started going to their family for Thanksgiving, I love that this is on tape for everyone to hear. I love that. I'm like, yes, well, go ahead. And it just was so not my family's Thanksgiving, right? Everyone got along, and it was quiet, and it was so nice. I was like, this is awesome. Wow, because my family's like, I love you. But then after I hung out with them for a few years, I saw they're crazy, right? But it was just a quiet crazy. It was a calm crazy. It was like right underneath. It was over here, and they just had these little things. And what I love about the family craziness at Thanksgiving, and by the way, if you've forgotten, I think it's kind of like the pain from childbirth. You forget every year. You're like, Thanksgiving's awesome. And then afterwards, you're like, oh my God. I don't mean to remind you a few weeks before. But it's so funny when you go, have you ever done somebody else's Thanksgiving? And you go, and their crazy is adorable, right? Because it's not your crazy, right? It's not like, no, you are not. It's like, oh, that's cute that they kind of want to do that. Somewhere in there's a point. Conflict. Let me share with you the 3 pieces of advice. Staying calm. You are not at your best self when you are knocked off center. How many of you would say on your best day, in your best mood, with the right situation and the right person, you're actually pretty good at handling conflict? Hands up. So guess what? Again, my job is not to teach you this is how you respond to conflict. No, it's about me saying, guess what we need to do with you? We need you to access your best self. And oh my gosh, yes. If we're a morning person, at the beginning of the day is a much better time for us to be dealing with something difficult. And if you're not a morning person, then that's not a good time. If you have been stretched a little bit, they invented this thing a few years after I was done being a kid called a timeout. We didn't have timeouts when I was growing up. We had the fly swatter, we had the belt, we had the wooden spoon. We had the wooden spoon with the hole in it that made it worse. Yeah. And certainly we had go to your room, right? We had go to your room. But a timeout, when employed correctly, is not a punishment, go to your room. It's a suspension of the situation, right? Stop everything. You're going to go that corner, you're going to go to this corner. Or we're going to suspend everything and we're going to go away, and then we're going to take some breaths and we're going to come back when we can bring our best selves. You guys, we need to use timeouts at work. We need you to recognize that you're not at your best or somebody else isn't at the best. I do this in phone calls all the time when I'm in a situation where I feel like I've got to assert myself, or I've got to say something, or I've got to do something, and I'm not feeling it come up, or I'm feeling myself getting a little whiny. I say, you know what? Depending on the person, I'll say, I'm not at my best right now. Can we table this till tomorrow? But sometimes I'll do this. I am so sorry, but I need to use the restroom. Can I call you right back? Most people are pretty forgiving with that, right? They will let me go to the bathroom, and I do go to the bathroom, and I throw some water on my face, and I take a couple deep breaths. And in 2 or 3 minutes, I can be a lot closer to my best self, even if I'm not all the way there. What else can you do? That deep breath, count to 5, count to 5,000. Is it a song? Is it a walk around the building? Is it doing something that you like doing for a couple minutes before you jump back into the thing you don't like so that you can calm down? The next one is about identifying illusions or delusions. How many people in this room have ever been driving along and everything going well and it's a good day and then somebody does something stupid and for 5 minutes or longer you're like, "Ugh." Yes? Anyone? Road ragers? Listen up. I used to have this really bad. And I don't know if you saw my car in the parking lot or on this thing, but I got smiley faces on my car now, so you really can't be giving people signs when you're, yeah. It's very, what they say, incongruent. I'll never forget driving home from Milwaukee on I-94 back to Madison at the end of a gig at a long day, and I'm just trying to get home, and I'm coming up behind a semi, and I'm going faster than the semi, and there's somebody in the, no, I'm telling the story wrong. There's a guy there's a guy over here behind the semi going faster than the semi. I come along in the left-hand lane going faster than both of them. Clearly, it is my turn to pass the semi first! And the only time I disagree with that is if I'm in the second car, and then it's I should go first because I'm ahead of you, right? It's which perspective you are. But anyway, I'm in this car, and this pickup truck actually didn't get the memo and cut in front of me. So I'm like, I gotta teach them, right? Because otherwise they won't learn. So I pull up right behind him and, use some artful, signs that aren't really sign language. And he didn't understand what I was communicating, and he slowed down and matched the speed of the semi. And there I am like a caged animal. So I passed him on the median. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say the look on his face was precious. He's like, whoa, and boy did he slow down. I am not proud of that. I got home, I was so fired up, the adrenaline rush. If anyone in this room has road rage, you know the adrenaline rush when you do stuff like that. It is so awesome. And I got home, and I called my friends, and no one clapped, and no one cheered. The first response, my best friend Ron said, he goes, so if there had been a police officer in the median, what would have happened? If there had been a homeless person standing on the side of the road or somebody I'm like, that would have sucked. I would be in jail right now. Someone could be hurt. Why are you raining on my fabulous parade? Another of my friends said, this proves that I do not ever want to drive in a car with you. I was taking some friends out to, this is totally a true story, I was taking some friends out to Easttown Mall from downtown Madison, and somebody was getting on 30, and they kind of got over and got in front of me, and you got to teach them. So they didn't signal! They didn't signal! So I did one of these, where you kind of, yeah. Next stoplight, my friend Mark gets out of the car. He says, I am not safe. Yeah, no, shut up. He walked 4 miles back to downtown, and we did not speak for 3 months. So one of my closest friends, thank God, we've eventually recovered. My other friend, Ron, he engineered an accidental running in, and he made us talk, and we made up, and it was all good. We're good friends to this day. Aren't we, Mark? Yes, we are. And I'm sure he's like, why are you telling our business? Okay. But I tell you how I got rid of road rage, besides painting smiley faces on my car, because it's very incongruent to do that to somebody, because when somebody cuts you off in traffic because they think they're better than you, I'll kill them. But when they cut you off in traffic because the phone just went off and they found out the baby is coming and they need to get to the hospital, I'm slowing down. I'm like, go, congrats, go! When you pull up to the stoplight and somebody gives you a look, have you ever had that? Where someone looks at you and you're like, oh, really? I'll kill him. But when I remember that they just got laid off from work and they're going home to tell their spouse and their kids, I feel awful. I said, you know what, give me that look. In fact, give me the finger. Vent it out. And I've discovered by coming up with these illusions, these delusions, of why people are not driving responsibly, it takes me sometimes whole extra 2 minutes to get places, right? It's like, not like it cost me that much. And let me tell you how much I get. I did this one thing when I was in Colorado. I spend a lot of vacation time in Colorado. And this one time on the way out there, I decided to have it, calling it honoring my limits. And I drove the speed limit for 3 weeks. Not 9 miles over, not 4 miles over, but I took the speed limit at its word. And if it was 30 miles an hour zone, I went 30. And if it was 50, I went 50. I have no idea how much time it cost me, but I can tell you the difference. Instead of always being in the fast lane, in always trying to win, because you almost never win if the race is the fastest, because there's always some jerk that's ready to win and go faster. But when winning is showing up relaxed, is feeling good, is counting it as karma points. You know what? I'm not in a hurry today. You go on. You go right ahead. No, it's your turn. You go. It earns up karma points. What delusions can you make up for somebody that you have to work with or serve that's grumpy all the time? Can you tell yourself a story about what they must have gone through to become that person? Listen, I'm not saying you have to put up with it, and you might not sometimes call them on inappropriate behavior. But what I remember when I worked at UW-Madison is I had meetings with students that was about mental health counseling stuff, depression, family stuff, eating disorders, big stuff, and I wanted to help them. And I had discipline files. These are the people that screwed up that I needed to tell them, you screwed up. You need to change your behavior. My last year as a hall director, I realized it was artificial to have 2 piles of students who needed my help and students who needed to yell at. And I realized I had 1 pile, students who need my help. And how I approached the students that were the discipline pile, completely different. And I discovered they do need my help. They don't always want it. They don't always know how they need it. But when I bring the compassion, the listening skills to it, it changed everything. I actually found, while I turn you loose with this activity, I just found in a blog I read, he shared with his blog readers this article about the 6 steps that FBI hostage negotiators are trained to do. And he points out that in most of our conflict situations, we only do the stage 5 and 6, and we skip stages 1 through 4, which every hostage negotiator will tell you is guaranteed failure. And it's just fascinating, and I just thought of it, so I'm going to find it, but I'm going to turn you loose with your activity. So this last one is about accepting the gifts. This point that I made to you that every single person you encounter has a gift for you, even the grumpy ones, even the ones that you have that are challenging sometimes. So we're going to do an activity. Did anyone not get the 2 quotes? Did we run out of quotes? Okay. Is there any extras? Okay. So if there are anyone besides this pile here that has extras, are there any other extras? Okay, we will open up. Let us do this. We'll open up a pack of Ripples cards. Daddy's not having dinner tonight. Oh. Did I just refer to myself as Daddy? Because that was creepy. We're editing that out. I don't know what that was, and now I'm blushing. Stop it! Awkward. Okay. So You just didn't know. Oh, it's an extra. I was like, you only have one. Okay, so you have 2 cards in front of you. And I am going to suggest to you in just a moment that when you turn them over, you are going to see 2 different quotes that are for 2 different people in your life. I am going to see if when you read these quotes, one of them, at least one of them, you know who it's for. One or both of them you might not know right away, but I'm going to have you see if when you read these quotes, you can think of someone you know really well or someone you know just a little bit. Comes to mind when you read the quote. After you read the 2 quotes and decide which one you might be comfortable sharing, get back in your pairs, triplets, or quads, but not more than that so we can hear from everyone, and share with them what the quote is, and not who it's for, but maybe why it's for them. Make sense? Go ahead and flip them over. Take a look at your quotes. It might take a second, and it's okay if nothing comes to mind right away. You can choose to find meaning in the quotes even if you don't know right away who it's for. But share in groups of 2, 3, or 4 why you think one of the quotes might be helpful for somebody else in your life. This is such a tangent, but I'm just going to show it to you really quick. So I get this newsletter that has 12 or 15 positive news stories every week. It's called the Good News Network. And this, just such a cool, knowing that some of you all do facility stuff, this Canadian guy was literally fishing on a boat thinking about 2 of his buddies that would never get to feel what it's like to be fishing on a boat because they're in wheelchairs. And they get to go fishing, but only from the pier. And as any awesome fisherman knows, it's a completely different experience than being out in the water. And he just daydreamed this invention. And he's come back and he's created a company. I guess it's like a semi-nonprofit. Like he's not trying to make $1 bazillion, and he's working with these other organizations to make it so that people on wheelchairs cannot, just fish from a pier. And there's this other image, and I think it's on this feed. I'm going to try scrolling down and see if it's look at that rowboat. This article talks about this guy rowing for the first time in 20 years. And look at how simple the adaptation is. For this adaptation, he says what was shocking was how easy it was. And how it was this simple thing that just no one thought of, because why would a person in a wheelchair want to row a boat? Well, because they do. So I really quickly just copied this image from this article. And if you look at these 6 steps, active listening, empathy, rapport, influence, behavioral change. So at the beginning, active listening. I am not judging. I am trying to hear what this person is saying. I am getting rid of any filter of deciding what they're right or wrong. And empathy is finding the way to see the world from their perspective. Now imagine trying to have empathy for somebody who is killing people. Okay? But this negotiator's only hope is to find a way to empathize. And it turns out that empathy is a skill that you can teach to many, many people that we used to think it was a personality trait that you were either born with or oh well. And developing a rapport, finding how we talk to them differently, involves meeting them where they're at, building up some rapport so that we can talk to each other in a way that there's some trust, and then I get to influence them. But look at how far influencing is up the alley. I'm very proud of the fact that of the 5,000 Facebook friends I have, thousands of them look at the world differently than me. In 2008, one of the first really big marker events for me being on Facebook was when President Obama got elected. As a lefty, I was excited. And at the first couple minutes of my newsfeed, oh my gosh, this is amazing, holy crap. It was particularly remarkable to hear from, there were like 3 or 4 African American students that were describing what their grandparents were doing as they watched this historic situation. And after about 3 minutes, some really negative comments started. And it was really heartbreaking. And after about 20 minutes, I had to get off Facebook, I had to go to sleep. The next morning, I crafted a statement, and again, I don't know if somebody in this room can tell that sometimes I can be a little bit dramatic. And I was like, how dare you? This is the office of the president, and I can't believe you can't have at least a modicum of respect. And within 5 seconds, someone wrote, because you never said anything bad about President Bush. Guilty! And that started a shift for me. Not from being politically neutral, not from not speaking my mind, but from changing the tone so that I would say things in a way that people who didn't agree with me could hear them. Not to change their perspective, but so that they could hear me. And I'm very proud of the fact when it comes to gay marriage, marriage, equality, the language keeps shifting. I'm personally pissed that the gays are getting married now because now I don't have a good answer for why I don't have a husband. Whatever! Because they won't let me! Oh, because I haven't found anyone. Sorry. Who knew I could go there? I did. Okay. Just keep on going. But what for me is so helpful is when we're talking about topics as difficult as abortion, as presidential Olympics, as Tea Party, who is this, what is that, are they good, are they bad, is I lived 5 blocks from the state capitol a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember, some protests. And I was up there every day as a lefty, right? Those are my people, I'm excited. And then, I'll tell you what, for the first chance in my life, I was going to get to hear Sarah Palin. I've never heard what she had to say that wasn't filtered through Fox News, through MSNBC, through CNN. I didn't want to know what somebody else thinks Sarah Palin says. I want to know what Sarah Palin has to say. And I didn't get to find out because I show up and a whole bunch of people that are on my side were drowning her out. And I thought, this is not how we figure out how to move forward with this. And I will tell you that I have gotten so much better at understanding how people look at lots of issues that to me it's like, hello. It turns out it's, oh, it looks different over here. I sat in the Tuesday night in Menominee, Wisconsin about 10 years ago. Wednesday was an in-service day. I was doing the in-service for the teachers in Menominee on LGBT issues. Diversity with a specific slant towards LGBT issues. And people had caught wind of it and were very concerned about this. So I said, I will come up early and let's have a community forum. And about 34, 35, 40 people showed up, and at the last minute, 14 people walked in together, holding Bibles, and sat in the front row. It felt very strange. And the best thing that came out of that meeting is this exchange I had with this woman who kept standing up saying, I do not want a pedophile teaching my son. And of course I wanted to smack her. Of course I wanted to smack her. Doesn't she know the difference between a homosexual and a pedophile? Until I realized she didn't. And I finally said, I need to stop. And I literally went to the classroom we were in and wrote the word pedophile on the board and explained the difference. And I'm telling you, I watched her face change. I watched it. I never would have believed that someone could be so silly to not understand. But I can imagine growing up in a certain household or in a certain place where she wasn't taught the difference. oh. And I've always held that with me when I've done diversity training, to remember that how people look at things is so different that if you skip over some of these steps, I'm going to figure out how to incorporate this into this training, because when I saw this, I thought, oh, this is good stuff. Our time is just 2 minutes from being done. And I am going to stick around. I get to present in this room. I'm very excited about this session I get to do in here for the final session, because it's called Get Better, Not Bitter. And it actually grew out of a crisis in a small town in Wisconsin that I'll tell you about then. But listen, use your break time to head to your next session if you need to. I've got Ripples cards and I can chat. I don't need to do anything other than sip some water. But hear me out when I say this if you're leaving. Thank you so much for spreading this information on to others, because it'll help us out. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you.